Before it became a six-story glass and concrete showpiece, this exact patch of land in Alabang was a preschool. Small Laude ran it herself for 8 years, teaching other people's toddlers their ABCs before she tore it down and built one of the most talked-about homes in Metro Manila right on top of it. Architect Ed Calma designed it. A trip to the Beverly Hills Hotel inspired an entire floor. And somewhere behind 6 stories of glass, art, and a literal candy fortune sits a woman who still goes by, of all things, small. So, is this just another flashy socialite mansion? Or is it the surprising next chapter of a farm girl from Nueva Ecija who once ran a preschool on the same soil? Let's find out. The house that ate her preschool. This whole thing started with a math problem, not a dream home. Small's mother-in-law, who happened to be born in the Chinese zodiac year of the dragon, just like Small's husband Philip, gifted the couple a lot right next to their existing house. That lot used to be Small's own preschool, a business she'd run for 8 years before shutting it down to focus on other ventures. Her first instinct wasn't even to build a new mansion. She just wanted to knock down the wall between the 2 properties and turn the empty lot into an extension. A pool here, a basketball court there, maybe a gazebo. Then she got the quote for tearing down that wall, and the number was so high it made no sense. So instead of paying for a simple renovation, she called architect Ed Calma to ask what he thought. That one phone call changed everything. Instead of knocking down a wall, they built a 6-story home. He looked at the lot and told her flat out that using it as a simple extension would be a waste of the space. She let him sketch something up, and as she's put it herself, that sketch turned into a real house almost overnight. The whole project traces back to a trip to Los Angeles too, oddly enough. Small toured a few homes out there and fell for the clean, modern architecture the city's known for, a real departure from what she thought she liked, since she's said more than once that she's not a fan of anything too cold or masculine. Somehow the finished house still ended up warm anyway. All glass panels, slate gray, and deep black on the outside, softened by exactly the kind of high ceilings and open flow she'd fallen in love with on that trip. She didn't plan any of this. She just did the math on a wall and ended up with 6 stories instead. A home now regularly featured in Philippine lifestyle and design coverage as one of the country's most distinctive private residences. What makes the storyland even harder is how personal that original lot actually was to her. She didn't buy this land or inherit it through some distant relative. She ran a preschool on it herself for 8 straight years, showing up day after day to teach toddlers who weren't her own kids their letters and numbers, long before candy money or YouTube fame entered the picture. Tearing that down to build something this size could have felt like erasing a piece of her own history. Instead, she's talked about it more like closing one chapter cleanly to open another, treating the site less as sentimental ground and more as simply the next logical use of land that already belonged to the family. The fact that her mother-in-law handed over the lot specifically because both she and Philip share the same zodiac sign only added another layer of meaning. Most outsiders would never clock just from looking at the finished house. Feng shui logic runs through plenty of major decisions in Chinese Filipino business families, and gifting land between 2 people born under the same auspicious sign is exactly the kind of quiet cultural detail that gets completely lost once a house this size starts circulating online purely as an aspirational status symbol. Visitors who've toured the finished property say the outside genuinely undersells what's inside too, since the facade reads as sleek and almost reserved from the street, giving very little away about the scale of what actually sits behind it across 6 full levels. That contrast is no accident. The outside stays quiet, but the inside goes all out. It's the exact same mindset she brought to her roof deck salon. Once Small falls in love with a bold idea, she goes all in, even if it means scrapping her original plans halfway through building it. Inside the 6 floors. Walk through the front door and the first thing that hits is how little of the house feels closed off. Smalls said she can't stand cramped, chopped-up rooms, so even the dining area just flows straight into the kitchen with nothing separating the two. That kitchen alone is worth pausing on. The countertops and shelving came from Arclinea, done entirely in bronze, and Calma reportedly told her to make it look good, specifically because the garden gives a clear view straight into it. Funny enough, Smalls admitted she's barely a cook. The space just inspired her to want to learn. The living areas keep splitting into smaller zones built for actual entertaining. Since with 4 kids constantly bringing friends over, the family needed rooms that could host more than one group at once without everyone piling into the same space. There's a home gym, a study built for movies and video games, and a garden with its own herb patch tucked into the property, but the real showpiece sits at the very top. Small's roof deck sanctuary is pale pink and lush green, a color scheme she picked to match her own personality, part sweet, part feisty. She originally wanted herringbone wallpaper up there and couldn't find one she liked, so she landed on a banana leaf print instead, almost by accident. Calma loved it so much he told her to just commit to the whole room. She couldn't source enough of the wallpaper in time, so the ceiling became striped instead, and somehow it works. The whole floor was inspired directly by a stay at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and it even includes her own pink glam salon, chair, and all. A detail she's openly said she borrowed from watching Kylie Jenner's house tours. Scattered throughout every floor is genuine art. Jose Joya, Jigger Cruz, MADSAKI, Takashi Murakami, most of it bought over the years at auction rather than picked up for decoration. Her husband and eldest son share that same collecting habit, with the son now bidding on emerging artists through Sotheby's on his own. Even the furniture has a story behind it, since most of it came from a single-family shopping trip to Italy rather than a local showroom. The kids get their own dedicated wing too, with 5 bedrooms total spread across the property, 1 for Small and Philip, and 1 apiece for each of their 4 children. The master suite carrying its own private anteroom and a walk-in closet large enough to function as a small room on its own. Smalls said the entertainment spaces were designed with her kids' friend groups specifically in mind, since a house with only 1 shared living room tends to funnel every visit into a single crowded space, while splitting the ground floor into distinct zones lets multiple groups hang out at once without anyone feeling like they're intruding on somebody else's hangout. The pool sits alongside a dedicated lounge area, and Smalls mentioned wanting to eventually add a gazebo up on the roof deck too, stretching the resort feel even further than the banana leaf room already pushes it. Even small functional choices throughout the house carry that same intentional weight. The German sandstone Small, picked for several interior walls, doubles as the material lining the pool area outside, tying the indoor and outdoor spaces together visually rather than treating them as 2 separate design projects handled by different teams. Calma's fingerprint shows up in that kind of continuity throughout the build, since his broader body of work has always leaned on material repetition to make large, multi-level homes feel like one connected structure instead of 6 stacked, disconnected floors bolted together. That approach extends to how the family actually uses the space too, since despite the scale, Small has said the house rarely feels empty or overly formal day to day, mostly because 4 kids and their rotating cast of friends keep nearly every floor in near constant use rather than reserved for special occasions only. The farm girl from Nueva Ecija. Before any of the marble or the Murakami, Small Laude was just Marissa Eduardo, born June 17, 1968, and raised in a business-minded family up in Nueva Ecija. Her family moved through a few different industries over the years: garments exports at one point, rice milling and rice trading at another, the kind of shifting, hands-on business background that doesn't leave much room for a soft childhood. She actually spent summers on the family farm in Jaén, helping plant vegetables, staying connected to land that had nothing glamorous about it. That contrast matters because Small isn't the only Eduardo sibling who ended up wealthy and well-known. Her sister Alice Eduardo built her own name in construction, running a company involved in major infrastructure projects, and their other sister Melba Eduardo Solidum has her own place in that same family orbit. The siblings still show up in each other's videos and public appearances regularly, treating their combined success less like a competition and more like a shared family project. Small went on to study at St. Paul University in Manila, while the man she'd eventually marry, Philip Laude, was across town at De La Salle. They met through a mutual friend, not some engineered introduction, and Philip has said in interviews since that he was drawn to her immediately, describing her at one point simply as the prettiest person he'd met. They married on October 31, 1993, and for the first 26 years of that marriage, they actually lived with Philip's Chinese-Filipino parents rather than striking out on their own right away. A detail that gets lost once people see 6 stories of glass and assume the wealth was always this visible. It wasn't handed to her fully formed. It built up slowly, generation folding into generation, long before any of it had a roof deck banana room attached to it. Small has said in interviews that those early years living under her in-law's roof actually shaped her more than any of the wealth that came later, since sharing a household with Philip's parents meant learning to navigate a completely different set of family customs and expectations well before she ever got to build a home entirely on her own terms. That period lasted over 2 decades, far longer than most modern couples would tolerate by choice, and Small has framed it less as a hardship and more as the reason she values having her own space so intensely now. The farm background from Nueva Ecija shows up in smaller ways too, in how she talks about food and her comfort around large extended family gatherings, and in an instinct toward practicality that occasionally surprises people who only know her from 6 stories of glass and imported Italian furniture. Her sister Alice has spoken publicly about their shared upbringing too, describing a household where every child was expected to understand the family business at some level, a philosophy that clearly shaped how both sisters approach money and ambition as adults. Small has occasionally mentioned that growing up around 3 different family businesses, each with its own rhythm and its own set of problems, taught her to see money less as a fixed inheritance and more as something that needs constant, active tending, an outlook that would later show up clearly in how she and Philip handled their own finances once they were finally out on their own. She's also spoken about how differently she was raised compared to her own children now, noting that farm chores and provincial summers gave her a baseline understanding of hard physical work that her kids, growing up inside a 6-story house with a home gym and a private roof deck, will likely never experience in quite the same way. The candy fortune she married into. Philip Laude didn't just marry into wealth, he came from it. And the source is something almost every Filipino kid has actually tasted without knowing it. His family runs Candyman Incorporated, the confectionery company behind Candy Mint, Orange Kissed, Viva, and their own locally made version of White Rabbit milk candy. The kind of household name brand that sits in sari-sari stores across the entire country. Philip is of Chinese-Filipino descent, and that heritage runs straight through the business itself. A multi-generational manufacturing operation built the same patient way a lot of Chinese-Filipino family businesses get built: reinvested profit, tight family control, decades of steady growth rather than one flashy breakout year. But Philip and Small didn't just sit back and manage what already existed. Together, they launched their own ventures outside the family candy business entirely, starting a printing company called Timson Printing and a brokerage firm called Timson Securities, both run independently of the Candyman name. That's worth pointing out, because plenty of families in their position would have been content coasting on one successful confectionery brand for the rest of their lives. Instead, the couple kept building sideways, stacking new income streams next to the original one rather than just living off it. Their social circle reflects that same layered wealth too. The couple has long run with names like Vicky Belo and the extended Barreto family, the kind of circle where a dinner party doubles as a rotating cast of the country's most recognizable last names. None of that changes what actually funds the day-to-day though. At the center of it all still sits a company most Filipinos know from a candy wrapper, not a headline, quietly backing one of the more visible lifestyles in the country. Candyman itself has stayed a relatively low-profile operation for a company with that level of nationwide product placement. The kind of business that doesn't need flashy marketing because its products have already been sitting on the same store shelves for decades, trusted by default rather than sold through hype. That quiet stability is part of what let Philip and Small branch out into printing and brokerage in the first place, since a manufacturing business with steady, predictable cash flow gives a family room to experiment elsewhere without betting the whole household on a new venture succeeding immediately. Their children have grown up watching that same instinct play out in real time too, surrounded by adults who treat business diversification as just something a family does, not a rare or risky move reserved for headline-making entrepreneurs. That mindset traces back generations on both sides of the marriage too, since Small's own family shifted between garments, rice milling, and rice trading long before Candyman ever entered the picture, meaning both halves of this household came in already fluent in the idea that a single business rarely stays the only business for long. Timson Printing and Timson Securities reflect that instinct directly. Since neither venture has anything to do with candy or confectionery manufacturing at all, proof the couple wanted genuinely separate income streams rather than simply expanding Candyman's existing footprint under a different name. Running a brokerage firm in particular requires a completely different skill set from managing a decades-old manufacturing brand. And the fact that Philip and Small built both operations alongside their existing family obligations says something about how much bandwidth this family has collectively developed for juggling multiple ventures at once without any single one falling apart from neglect. Family businesses of this size in the Philippines often struggle exactly at this stage, the point where the founding generation's single product line either gets diversified thoughtfully or gets stretched too thin trying to do everything at once, and the Laude approach so far has clearly leaned toward the former. The empire she built herself. For most of her adult life, Small was content supporting Philip's side of things, rather than building a public name of her own. That changed in 2019, when she started vlogging almost on a whim, with no real plan beyond documenting her actual daily life. It caught on fast. Her channel grew into the millions of subscribers, built around the exact house we've just walked through, family trips, the kids constantly wandering into frame, and a personality that reads as genuinely unfiltered rather than produced for an algorithm. That authenticity is exactly what turned a socialite's hobby into an actual business. She's since built out a beauty brand and a homeware line that trade directly on her own name and taste rather than her husband's business connections, plus books that extend the same lifestyle brand into print. Independent estimates now put her personal net worth somewhere around $5 million, a figure some broader estimates push considerably higher once every venture and asset gets counted, built almost entirely on content, brand deals, and business lines that exist separately from the Candyman fortune sitting behind her husband. That distinction actually matters more than it sounds. A lot of wives married into old Chinese Filipino manufacturing money never bother building anything under their own name at all, content to simply enjoy what's already there. Small went the other direction, using her own visibility to create income streams nobody handed her. Between the YouTube channel, the beauty and homeware lines, and her stake alongside Philip in Timson Printing and Timson Securities, the woman who once ran a tiny preschool on that same plot of land now runs a genuine personal business empire on top of it, 6 stories tall and entirely her own. What separates her channel from a lot of other wealthy lifestyle vloggers is how little of it feels staged for the algorithm. Smalls said outright that she never expected any of this to become a career, and that instinct still shows in how loosely produced most of her videos remain, even now that the subscriber count runs into the millions. There's no writer's room crafting a persona here, just a woman in her 50s filming her actual house, her actual kids, and her actual friends, which turns out to be exactly what a huge chunk of her audience wanted all along. Her sister Alice's own public profile has only added to that pull too, since fans who follow one Eduardo sister frequently end up following the other, treating the whole extended family almost like a shared cinematic universe of Philippine wealth and personality. That crossover appeal has become its own kind of asset too, since brands looking to reach an older, affluent demographic increasingly treat Small less like a traditional influencer and more like a trusted household name. The same trust Candyman built with candy wrappers now quietly extending into skincare and home goods carrying her own signature instead. It's worth noting how unusual that career pivot actually is for a woman in her 50s starting essentially from zero on a completely new platform. Most successful YouTube lifestyle channels in the Philippines skew toward creators decades younger than Small, meaning her entire audience base got built by proving that an older established socialite could still connect authentically with a broad digital audience rather than niche viewers her own age. That crossover reach is exactly why brands keep circling her for partnerships that have nothing to do with her husband's candy fortune at all. It also means her income today looks nothing like it did even 5 years ago, shifting from purely household spending money tied to Philip's business into something closer to an actual independent revenue stream she controls outright. From a rural childhood in Nueva Ecija to a 6-story glass mansion built on the site of her own old preschool, Small Laude's story runs through candy money, family art collections, and a YouTube channel nobody expected to take off. What part of this surprised you the most? The preschool origin story or that banana leaf room? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to her status for more deep dives into the biggest homes and fortunes across Philippine entertainment.